Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today for our webinar, Project Funding Opportunities for COVID-Impacted New York State Manufacturers. I'm Kim Lloyd. I'm the Special Projects Director at Fuse Hub, and I'm one of your presenters today. Later on, we're going to hear from Eric Vassar from Fuse Hub, Annette Brenner from NextCore, Michael Lobsinger from CEG, and Alexis Wilson from MTech. So we have a great lineup for you today, and we have a lot of good information to share. Next. All right, so in our agenda today, we're going to talk about the MEP COVID Recovery Initiative, and we're also going to cover what our Manufacturing Reimagined is and the fund that's associated with it and the eligibility process and the application process. Then we're going to dive into the other New York MEP funding opportunities that the other MEP centers will tell you about later on. So what is the New York MEP and what's the goal of this program? So manufacturing employs over 450,000 New Yorkers across the state, spread across nearly 17,000 business locations. So there are a lot of you out there that need some assistance. The New York MEP, under the guidance of Empire State Development's Division of Science, Technology, and Innovation, NYSTAR, is a network of 11 centers across New York State. I'm with Fuse Hub, the statewide center. We support the regional MEP centers and promote the broader New York MEP network through events, raising awareness, and connecting manufacturers like you to our manufacturing experts within the New York MEP network and other programs such as Centers of Excellence, Centers of Advanced Technology, and others that are housed in universities. Services from an MEP center typically include innovation strategies, technology acceleration, process improvements, new market strategies, quality control, product development and prototyping, manufacturing scale-up, sustainable manufacturing, supply chain assistance, and then entrepreneurial support. So there is quite a bit that we do to support manufacturers across New York State. The NIST MEP Emergency Assistance Program was an initiative developed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology to support US-based small and medium-sized manufacturers prevent, prepare, and respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. The goal of this initiative is to provide services that directly support manufacturers' ability to respond to the coronavirus through accelerating the production of products like PPE and services that support manufacturers' ability to improve their competitiveness as the marketplace adapts to the coronavirus disruption. Next slide. Later on, you'll hear from other New York MEP centers that have programs under the same NIST grant who offer services and funding to help towards this common goal. So these 4 pillars, webinars and online workshops, reshoring and rebuilding supply chains, PPE assistance, and then virtual assessment and assistance are full 4 pillars that New York MEP has formed under the NIST COVID Recovery Initiative efforts. So Eric, who's coming on next, will be talking about the Manufacturing Reimagined Fund, which is part of the webinars and online workshops pillar. We've already done 2 webinars as part of this pillar with several more upcoming webinars. You'll see the link later on. I'm sure Eric and others will share it, but if you go to New York spelled out, MEP.org, and look under COVID initiative, you will see all these pillars and all these programs described there, and you'll see a way of getting in touch with us about that. We're not expecting you to be experts in all of these programs, but we really wanted to give you some background and make sure you were aware of how we are aligned to give us the best chance of focusing on specific areas of COVID or pandemic recovery. We get a lot of requests that just say, I'm looking for funding, and that's really all we get in the request. So we sometimes don't get much more detail than that. But we all know that you are on this webinar because you're looking for money to help your business. But as we dig deeper into why you need that funding, there's always more opportunity to help optimize what is happening behind the scenes to give you an even better chance of financial benefit than just simply writing a check to help you with your business. So we're going to talk more about that. But at this point, I'll kick it over to Eric Vassar, who's going to give you some more details on the funding opportunity.
Thanks, Kim. So before I jump in, I noticed there's about a dozen or so people that hopped in recently. So I just want to kind of reiterate what Kim had said earlier about this fund being part of the Manufacturing Reimagined program, which is made possible by the NIST MEP Emergency Assistance Program. And as Kim said, this was developed to support small and medium-sized U.S. manufacturers, specifically to help them kind of prepare for and respond to issues caused by COVID. So our goal is to provide services that directly support these manufacturers and their ability to respond to coronavirus, such as accelerating production of PPE, supporting their ability to improve their competitive as the market adapts to disruptions caused by coronavirus. So I'm going to go through some of the funding support associated with this particular pillar, which we're calling the training pillar, specifically webinars and online workshops that we've branded as Manufacturing Reimagined. So again, the goal of our pillar, our training pillar, is to provide technical assistance to manufacturers in New York to help them respond to COVID issues. So those could be things like if you had to switch your product focus to work on PPE or ventilators. Maybe you were considered non-essential and you had to shut down or lay off some employees, and you're looking at how to rebound for that. A lot of people were experiencing supply shortages from supply chain issues, and there's others. So again, the idea is to provide training on all those fronts, and later I'm going to put up a link to the webinars we already have planned out through the next 8 or so months. And then the second part of that is to help you establish connections with various NYSTAR assets. And I'm going to go through what those are, but these are all entities within New York that are experts in their fields that can, they can help you really identify what is maybe the core issue you're dealing with and help you find resources to address that. And then the last part is to, again, why everyone's tuned in here, is to find out what available funding is out there to help initiate some of these projects and get everyone back on track. So specifically talking about the funding, just a brief overview is, again, this is a fund. We want to help put some of these training initiatives into practice. We want to help identify projects, help you identify projects that are specific to your company and help you address a specific COVID-related challenges. We're going to help you identify NYSTAR innovation assets and partner with them, and then apply for funding with a maximum award for our portion of this fund of up to $10,000. So it's pretty simple. It's a 3-step process. I'm going to go through each of these in more detail, but just as an overview, step 1 is to participate in one of our webinars or workshops. And again, there'll be a list later on. You can go online and find out which ones are most relevant to the issues you're experiencing. Step 2 is to request what we're calling a resource report. And I'm going to go through this in more detail, but basically this is to help identify resources that exist in New York State that can help you with an issue. So whether it's a service provider or some type of entity that can help you identify the problem and figure out a way to solve it, we're going to help you find that issue. The resource report is a way that we can interact with you, learn about your problem, and then make recommendations on those resources. And then step 3 is hopefully you use that report to identify the best fit for your project and apply with that resource. You co-apply for the funding. So just to go through in more detail. So step 1 is technical assistance. So I just want to talk a little more about all these workshops and webinars we're doing. We've got a number of topics we're covering. They're all COVID related, and they're all manufacturing focused. So we've been seeing a lot of stuff out there about COVID and how to get your business back on track, but they all haven't been manufacturing focused. So we want to, as an MEP center, make sure we're focusing on on our network and helping out people with manufacturing focused issues. And these are things like Kim said, we already did one on quality, maintaining quality through a pandemic. We've got a couple coming up on supply chain and reshoring. We're doing crisis workarounds, things like that are really specific to manufacturers. So a variety of topics. We're going to have a number of different speakers involved, both nationally renowned speakers. We're going to hear from a lot of people in our MEP network. And then we're going to hear from a lot of manufacturers in New York that maybe have experienced some of these issues and found a way to work through them and can do a case study or a best practices portion of the presentation. And then lastly, we've got different platforms that we're working with. We're doing some traditional webinars like this. We're also using other platforms that are more of a virtual workshop format. So it gives a chance for people to do some networking in addition to have presentations. And we've done a couple of those so far and finding that those are really working well. We're getting a lot of positive feedback. So look for more of those to come along as well. All right, so step 2 is this resource report that I mentioned before. So what is it? So it's a literal report that you're going to get. So something you put your hands on and refer back to. It's going to have topic-based recommendations. So when you and I have a chat or somebody else on our team chats with you and really kind of digs down and finds out, okay, what are the biggest issues you're dealing with? We can customize this report and make sure you're getting recommendations and referrals to other companies and entities that can help you out. To get one is real easy. There's a link here. This recording will be posted so you can refer back to it, but we're also going to send a follow-up email after the webinar, and there'll be a direct link to apply for one of these reports. It's very simple. Name, email, phone number, and then you click a button and give a brief description of what you think your issue is, and then we'll have someone to reach out to you. And why would you do this? Well, first of all, it's free. There's no cost to you. It's kind of what we do at Fuse Hub. And then the second part is we're making this a requirement of the funding. So we want to really make sure that we're helping companies up front to identify the issue and the resources that can help, and then use that as a pathway to get funding to support projects. So then the third part of that, again, is it kind of goes back to that resource report to identify NYSTAR innovation assets. These are the people you're going to want to be looking to for expertise, so you can lean on them and engage them to help with your issue. So who are these NYSTAR innovation assets? Well, there's over 70 of them. They're all New York-based entities. They include the MEP centers, centers of excellence. They include centers of advanced technology, various incubators and hotspots. So again, there's a link here you'll be able to refer to in the recording. And what do they do? Well, they're all, like I mentioned, they're all experts in their respective technical fields. They're doing things like applied research in energy, materials, biotech, electronics. Some of them specialize in development and commercialization. Again, fields like nanotech, environmental sciences, food and beverage, sustainability, just about every conceivable technology industry is covered. And then services for that industry are provided by at least one of the assets. So again, it all comes back to that resource report. Again, the goal is to have a discussion with us, help you navigate through all of these potential assets, because nobody's got the time to sit and go through all 70 plus and figure out exactly what they do. But work with us. We can help you identify which one or which ones might be a best fit, and then that can go a long way in helping you identify a project, partner with someone to apply for funding, and address your specific COVID-related challenge. Okay, so the eligibility requirements are pretty simple. If you've seen any of Fuse Hub's, any of the grants we're in charge of, you've seen these before. We're looking for New York-based manufacturers, small and medium size, so less than 500 employees. companies that are registered with Dun & Bradstreet and have a manufacturing NICS code. No surprises there. The application process itself, again, pretty simple. It goes back to the three-step process I mentioned earlier. So you have to complete those requirements. And then once you identify who your NYSTAR asset is that you're going to partner with, just with them, you complete the application questions. Those are, again, it's not designed to be a final exam. It's designed to be easy. So it's really just a project description, how that project is going to help the manufacturer in that partnership, and what are the estimated impacts. Furthermore, so you need to apply jointly. The manufacturer and the asset need to apply together, but either one of them can be the one that completes the application. We're going to accept these on a rolling basis throughout the next 12 months, and it's only going to be, we're only accepting projects that align with a COVID-related recovery effort. So again, it goes back to that, the whole purpose of this NIST program is to help with COVID issues. All right, a little bit of fine print here. Total funding available through the Manufacturing Reimagined tier, and you're going to hear about the other 3 tiers in a minute. But through the Manufacturing Reimagined is $170,000, maximum award of $10,000 per project, like I mentioned. There is a cost sharing component to it. So for example, if you're looking for the maximum award of $10,000, you have to show a budget of at least $12,000, so that the manufacturer contributes 20% of that, or $2,000. The funds are paid directly to the NYSTAR asset. The timeline for projects, they must be completed by August 31st. So these should be projects, once you identify your NYSTAR asset, you should really be able to hone in on a project that you can implement immediately and have it completed by August 31st. Manufacturer must commit to completing a survey afterwards to help us record the impacts. And here's not a comprehensive list of what these can be used for, but just we're looking for things like design and engineering support, testing, consulting, feasibility studies, things like that. We're not looking to support salaries, equipment purchases, software licenses, and things like that. So if there's a question about the eligibility, just reach out to us and we can help you navigate through that. So again, for the Manufacturing Reimagined portion of this fund, the next steps would be to check out what the upcoming events are at the New York, spelled out, MEP.org website, and you can click on the link to find out what the next events coming up are. There's a summary on the right there. Register to attend, sit in on a webinar, sit in on a virtual workshop, and then request your free resource report. We'll help you identify potential partners, partner with one of those NYSTAR assets, define a project with them, and apply for funding. So pretty straightforward. For now, we're going to move on and look at what the other funding opportunities are. So again, we talked about those 4 tiers in this COVID recovery initiative. I just talked about the webinar and online workshop portion, which we branded Manufacturing Reimagined. Next, we're going to hear from Michael Lobsinger about reshoring and rebuilding supply chains, and then we'll hear about PPE and the virtual assessment ones. So I am going to turn it over. Michael, take it away.
Thank you. Hear me okay?
Yes.
So welcome everybody. Michael Lobsinger here, Senior Vice President for the Center for Economic Growth. We are the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Center for the Capital Region. We are the lead on the reshoring and rebuilding supply chains part of this funding. And it's in with partnership also with Central New York TDO and Stony Brook Manufacturing Technology Resource Consortium, or MTRC. So us 3 centers are taking the lead on this program and distributing it across the state. We're still working out some details of this, and I'll try to share some anecdotes of where we're at. But when it comes to eligibility and how we're going to dole out the money that's available, it's going to pretty much kind of be the similar type of requirements that FuseHub and Eric mentioned for their program as well. So the whole point about the reshoring and rebuilding supply chains is really understanding or helping companies who have been impacted, their supply chain has been impacted by COVID-19, or because of COVID-19 and these impacts, there's an opportunity to be looking at reshoring. It's been talked about a lot lately because of these impacts and getting U.S. made goods and people pivoting, and it really does present a great opportunity for companies to explore this, and we want to give them the tools and ability to look into that and then do some project work towards it if there is an opportunity. So first step of this program is we're trying to develop the criteria that our assets and partners are going to use to identify the companies that actually really do have a good opportunity. So we want to ask some very specific questions, kind of find out their size and how they've been impacted and why, and that will lead us to later a further engagement. So we are developing an assessment, kind of an assessment tool. It's more of a survey tool to gain some information that the assets will be going around and talking with manufacturers. But you don't have to wait for that. We are going to send this out broadly once it's available, and you'll be able to fill out that survey and get a response from us pretty immediately. The other thrust of this is to really help adapt or establish the tools that are going to be used. So how do we measure whether there's an opportunity? How do we assess your supply chain? There's a bunch of different tools that are out there that can be used to help do those assessments, and we're going to make those available. There's a couple really good organizations out there, the Reshoring Institute and the Reshoring Initiative. Both are really great programs that have different tools and resources to do these assessments, and we're going to want to make sure we make those are available to as many manufacturers as we can. And then once they're identified, we're going to be providing assistance in projects to then move those opportunities forward. Next slide. There we go. So the first thrust really is for us to market and conduct the outreach to identify the companies, leveraging our assets, leveraging our mailing lists and all the MEPs. Excuse me. And then we're also going to be partnering with Fuse Hub and others and deliver out some sessions and webinars to kind of train around these tools and what's available and how to implement them. As Eric mentioned earlier, in October, there's likely going to be a reshoring webinar that's coming up that'll be available for people to watch and take part in. And then funding some of these assessments. So we've set aside $180,000 to do assessments such as total cost of ownership or import substitution programs, or looking at alternative materials and processes, supply chain gap analysis. Some of our assets also have programs within their universities that can help with supply chain, so they can do the direct service to you as well. But so there's $180,000 there that's going to be made available, and that's just to do an assessment to see if there's an opportunity. I'm guessing there's going to be about enough. It's hard to say because the assessments can range in cost a little bit, but probably about 70 or so assessments maybe could be done with this money. We do want companies, to do an assessment in order to get access to other funds, which is going to be on this next slide. So next slide. There we go. So the next tranche of funding is $200,000. And this is really then to help on the project basis of things. Once you actually identify an opportunity to reshore or fix your supply chain, or you find that you can in your supply chain you can become more vertical and more competitive by doing some operational efficiencies and things like that. We help try to identify those opportunities. Well, then there's the additional funds there. We haven't quite yet decided what the level of that funding is going to be. It might be a very similar model to what we saw in the last funding tranche, though. But the idea here is the assets and the client would engage with their MEP. And we really want to do this because it's important that we capture the metrics of all these projects. And then we would identify a scope of work. Like I said, these projects can be in lean, ISO, new product development, new market studies and development, supply chain work, potentially even maybe some equipment. And then the other benefit of these projects too is if there's an opportunity, we could leverage possibly other grants that might be available from WDI or the utility programs that we have as well. So there's a really good opportunity here to, bolster pretty strong projects. Give an example that came to light recently, and we came across a company really soon that was interested in reshoring, and it happened to be in the paper industry. And Matt Watson from NISTAR shared, hey, why, there's this whole article on why we can't find the non-woven or the hand wipes or the Clorox wipes anywhere, and there's a demand for the non-woven fabrics, and they're all going towards making PPE, but now this other product's not available, and we don't really have a good domestic source in the US. Well, that prompted this company, which is a paper company, to say, hey, how do we get more in that, consumer wipes, toilet paper market? Because they currently just import a lot of that. They don't make it. They make other products that are related. So it's very interesting opportunities, but we only really learn those things unless we really do an assessment and see that is there a really good return on investment and opportunity for those things. So so other goals of this program though is we really want to also try to aggregate this data so we can maybe draw some broader conclusions on how the state was impacted and how we can become also more resilient. There's a lot of talk about other funds coming, maybe federally or state, to help reshoring initiatives and things like that. So we want to make sure that we can build a case for those things and share the data that we get so we can form some sort of roadmap or a plan so people can more easily tap into, hey, maybe I do have an opportunity for reshoring, what are the best practices? And then also there is some money we have set aside too that we're going to try to do some more integration of tools for advanced adoption of automation, robotics. One thing we've been hearing a lot of is that our supply chains were strained. Everybody doesn't, employees got sick, and now everybody's spread apart 6 feet, so they're only using at 50% capacity. And how can we leverage automation? So we want to make some tools available there too. So you'll be seeing some things automated as well. If you want to learn more about that and make sure that we have you and you get an email from us, there's a link they're going to share later in the program where you can put in an inquiry, and we'll follow up with you and make sure that you are kept up to date. That's all I got. Thank you. Any questions, we'll get to that later. I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, thanks, Michael. Annette is going to talk about the PPE. Take it away, Annette.
Okay, thank you very much. And Michael, as you were talking, it was great for me because I was thinking about some of our past conversations I've been having with manufacturers within the Finger Lakes region. And I think that's key to mention here is be sure you're having those conversations because there's so many opportunities that are changing day to day and opportunities that are going to come up. And so I'm going to highlight a few examples as we talk about the PPE assistance that is part of this program as well. So my name is Annette Brenner, and I work with NextCore, which is the Finger Lakes MEP. And then I'm also partnered with Kinda, who's taking the lead on this portion out of ITAC, which is downstate in New York City. And I take it very dear to my heart, all the work that's going on out of New York City, because I was there as this whole COVID thing started, March 9th to the 11th. And what a difference that made to me, being not that far away in Rochester, but yet a very different dynamic. And we have so much to learn from each other and things we can do. So that led a lot to what is part of this PPE assistance portion. And we'll talk about a PPE demand self-assessment tool, the management of that supply chain and looking at how we deal with our PPE, and then also procurement models and logistics. And I want to take a step back and say the PPE I'm talking about is separate from the medical supply chain that is very critical for our front end healthcare workers. So a lot of what we saw was some competition in the early days of this. And what we want to make sure is that manufacturers and those that don't need medical grade PPE are not competing with that critical supply chain for our care. And you're going to see me talk about the survey a bit. So let me delve into these 3 areas and exactly the activities and then where the opportunities are for you in the audience. So next slide, please. So the self-assessment tool, what we're looking at is a forecasting model with inputs based on the new and the post-pandemic operating environment. If we look at the forecasting, all the data, this isn't going to end tomorrow. We're not sure when, but what we want to do is make sure that we're geared toward another potential issue that comes up in the future and that we're handling this as best we can going forward. So looking at how we write spec and forecast our PPE needs within manufacturing and throughout other industries that are in parallel. And so there's a survey that's been developed to better understand that demand. So again, if you've not filled out this survey, I'm going to mention it a few more times yet during my presentation. The second area is really looking at demand management and supply qualification. So what we want to do is look and review the PPE designs that are out there. Some of them are more sustainable than others. Not everyone needs an N95, but what fits the different industries or the different sectors of the population and making sure that we can supply that. And then also looking at potential reuse opportunities, cleaning practices, and also sanitizing practices, and being sure that we're looking both in the future and also in handling the current issues that we're having right now. And then what we want to do is really highlight those PPE suppliers within New York. A lot of fabulous companies have pivoted. Many of you have probably filled out Chamber of Commerce type surveys and identified your product to your nearby neighbors. But what we want to make sure is that any product made in New York is accessible to other folks in New York, and then even more broadly within the national MEP network. And then I'm going to talk more about PPE maximization projects later, because that's the actual funding resources we're trying to get right into companies' hands to move some of these efforts faster. Next slide, please. So we're also looking at procurement models and logistics. Very early on, as the demand for masks and things like that became very high in demand, couldn't find them. Prices were all over the map and things like that. So what we're looking at is really understanding the existing and emerging PPE buying channels, and again, looking at how it's different or in parallel to the medical channels. Review the pricing and supply aggregators. If you're a small manufacturer of 1 to 10 employees, you're not going to buy 500,000 masks, but yet that can be done if we aggregate in a way that makes sense for New York and for the regions that we're in. And then highlight opportunities for this group buying and the warehousing. And so again, I'm going to mention the survey one more time after this, but looking at understanding the demand across the state will help us with that supply chain and logistics model as it comes together. So the survey, please fill it out, realizing that many of you have filled out probably, like I said, many surveys for other people. This one's very critical in quantifying our needs for PPE within the manufacturing sector. So again, in parallel to medical, but how critical is it within manufacturing? And then if we think about manufacturing, think about all our food and ag companies, and then as you go to the restaurants and things like that, understanding those industries individually is very critical to our efforts. So please fill it out if you're purchasing PPE. If you need help in purchasing PPE, we have different supply chains already set up to help you find a very cost-effective products as you need them. And then also what's very key here as we look toward projects, if you're also involved in PPE cleaning or sanitizing technologies, please fill out the survey and let us know those details as well. And then the key is also if you have pivoted and are looking to produce a permanent product, we're looking to identify those new technologies that can help us down the road. So our products and technologies will be evaluated for sustainability, reuse, and also impacts. So how do we take it right now and make a better product? And then how do we better prepare ourselves for the future? Next slide, please. So in doing that, these are going to be PPE maximization projects. And so looking at either PPE directly or cleaning and sanitizing products to be evaluated for sustainability, reuse, and impact. So for example, many of you may have pivoted and are now working under an EUA, an emergency use authorization, or working on getting that through for your product to be approved. Down the road, probably next year, we're not sure when, the FDA 510K will probably be required for you to offer that in a permanent manner. And so some companies are already starting to do that transition and looking forward. How can we help you do that faster to make sure we're ready to meet all the regulations as they come down? Because I'm pretty sure we're not going to be less regulated as we go forward, but eventually the FDA is going to be very specific on products that are there and usable. So we're looking at least 10 projects and likely support of 10K for those projects. And again, looking for New York companies that want to develop and scale a permanent product offering within the state. And so project requests will be solicited in the fourth quarter, and that down selection based on sustainability, reuse, and impact will lead to project kickoffs then in the first of the year. So let me know if you have any questions as we move forward in the question and answer session of this session. Thank you. And next we have Alexis covering the third part of the grant.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Annette. Hello, everyone. My name is Alexis Wilson, and I'm the project manager for the Next Generation program coming out of the Hudson Valley MEP Center, the Manufacturing Technology Enterprise Center. Before diving into our program features and benefits, I just wanted to thank Fuse Hub for providing us with a platform to educate their audience about our programs and tools that we're all developing. I know that we're all super excited to not only announce but start working with our local manufacturers and connecting them with the opportunities and relief that they need. So thank you again to our partners at Fuse Hub for the opportunity. Now, I'd love to tell you all more about what the Virtual Assessments and Assistance Program has to offer, the Next Generation program. When we were developing this program, we asked our manufacturers what services would benefit them the most on their road to recovering from the impacts of the pandemic. And the answer we got was that each one of you needed something different. So while our program is focused on service offerings and our 4 core competencies of lean, cybersecurity, quality, and engineering services, we remain committed to connecting manufacturers with the services that they need. Next, it's imperative that these services are delivered in a way that doesn't interfere with current guidelines. You see in other industries take advantage of teleconsulting even before facing the impacts of COVID-19. And we plan on utilizing that practice to deliver the services that manufacturers love without sacrificing any of the effectiveness. We plan on using cameras, webcams, and smartphones to replace the eyes of the consultant and continue to adhere to social distancing guidelines. As for project funding, many other pillars also have project funding. We do as well. So as far as that goes, this is a grant program. In order to develop a program that truly works, we're offering virtual services for free for up to a $10,000 value. This grant will cover services through MTech and our trusted third-party providers, as well as any equipment our consultants deem necessary to execute said services, like headsets and microphones, perhaps. To qualify, all you need is a manufacturing NAICS code, and preference right now is currently being given to companies considered new to the MEP system. And lastly, we invite you to share your voice in dictating how the next generation of services will be delivered. There are many new exciting technologies and effective service methodologies on the horizon, and the participation from proactive individuals like the ones that we have here today is critical in ensuring the manufacturer and MEP relationship not only survives, but grows stronger. In order to get a feel for the whole application process or get a feel for how you could fit into this, you can email me. My email is up on the slide in front of you, alexis.wilson@hvtdc.org. And thank you again to Fuse Hub for the opportunity. I think we're good for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Alexis, Michael, and Annette, and Eric. You guys did a great job. What we're going to do now is we're going to open up the floor for questions. So feel free to type your questions in. We'll take a few questions if anybody has any. You can type them into the questions box or you can type them into the chat, up to you. We're monitoring both. One question that came in is, how do you support companies offering new tech opportunities for post-COVID logistics like drone or robotic-based deliveries? So, Alexis, just a quick question for you, is the virtual assessments, do yours cover at all better ways of contact-free delivery of physical goods, or is it mainly just virtual services?
I think there's definitely room for that in a space where our engineering services would definitely overlap with automation in those systems. So I think that that's definitely something that could fall under the parameters. If it could be conducted virtually, we can do it.
Great. I also think that another way of potentially answering that question is we are interested if a manufacturer does come to us and they say, well, that is one of their primary issues is this type of contact-free delivery of goods to your customers, we can potentially add you to our resource pool. So fill out the Manufacturing Reimagined form that Eric had put on the web mentioned earlier, and indicate that that's something you're interested in supplying to COVID impacted manufacturers, and we'll put you in our resource pool as a potential solution for companies that are looking for that. Another question that has come in is we've had issues finding cost-effective local suppliers, and how do you help us find cost-effective suppliers? So maybe we can talk to Mike. Mike, do you have an answer for that question?
So yeah, what we'd want, obviously where we would start there is you fill out the questionnaire that we're going to have just to kind of identify the issue a little bit deeper. And then we would probably look at some sort of team analysis just to kind of prioritize and map out your how you're finding them and what the issues are and where you need to be. So, you can really target in on what are the requirements of the suppliers that you need. And then work on a project to potentially identify suppliers, regionally, nationally. The one thing about the MEP is we're a really broad network of connected centers, not only in New York, but across the United States. And, we often will be connecting with each other. Does anybody know a company that does this or supplies this? So we have a broad network to reach out to. But also, even if you have current suppliers that you want to work with that maybe have they have some price gaps, and hey, if they could get a little bit closer, we could work with them. Well, then maybe the MEP should be working with your supplier to help improve their process, to then maybe can get you a better price. So it's kind of interesting because manufacturers buy from other manufacturers. So oftentimes you'll see in good supply chain programs, larger OEMs and tier ones will actually work really closely with their tier twos, tier threes, and whatever on their costs because they have a high interest in maintaining them. So there's different things and steps that we can take, and those would be really things that could be tackled in our program.
Great, thank you. Annette, I think this one might be for you. Besides PPE, is there support for a nutraceuticals manufacturer with a clinically tested product relevant within the context of COVID-19?
I'll say it probably depends, but yes, there should be some availability there, either directly through the program or in parallel through the MEP network. So looking at how it directly relates to COVID, we are actually going to be evaluating kind of each of our projects under some guidelines in improving PPE maximization. So depending on how it fits under that, what I would say is it may not fit directly, but there should be other opportunities within the MEP network to support the project.
Okay, great. Thank you for this webinar. How much time from when an assessment is requested to when it takes place? Eric, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so for the resource report assessment portion, we'll turn those around quickly. It's a matter of getting the form in, scheduling a phone call to kind of hash out some details, And then, we've got a huge network of resources that we can put together pretty quickly. So usually we like to say we'll turn those around 24 to 48 hours. It's all going to depend on volume, but within a couple of days, we should be able to get a report back to you. And then on the assessment side of it, maybe Alexis wants to chime in there and talk about their portion of it.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So as of right now, we're in the works of developing a self-assessment tool that we're going to try to use to really pinpoint those pain points that a lot of our manufacturers are experiencing. The tool is intended to root out the very apparent cause and get to the bottom of what it actually is. So we're excited to roll that out. That's something that I can definitely talk to anyone more who's interested about if they want to shoot me an email.
So if an assessment is completed and suggests that new equipment is needed, is equipment still not covered? And I think this is going to vary by program. So I know we heard from some people today who said equipment was covered as part of their funding and some that said that equipment wasn't. So I think the answer is going to be it depends. Does anybody want to chime in on the equipment question?
Yeah, this is Eric. I would just add that, because the Manufacturing Reimagined portion does have that cost sharing, if let's say that portion, the cost sharing portion covered the equipment, then you could still apply for the project that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll chime in very quickly in that the SBA has some phenomenal programs right now. There are a number of programs focused on either equipment or buildings, things like that that may fit. Worth looking very local as to what your city and your county is doing as well to help support manufacturers in that space. So not something we can do directly, but if you haven't reached out to your MEP Center, we may have other connections that you've not yet talked to in order to help with that.
Mike, did you have something to add?
Yeah, Annette stole my thunder. I was going to say the same thing. We have all of us have good connections with our counties and IDAs and things that you can leverage there. Our program, there may be some, you can use it for some equipment. Now, knowing that, one particular project I know of, the equipment is $500,000, so I can't really support that necessarily, but sometimes these types of initiatives also help you build your story for when you actually apply for other grants or other funding from these other partners. So when they see that you spent the time to really understand your project and the opportunity and the impact and say, hey, yeah, we need to invest this money on this, it's going to strengthen those types of applications for other funding. So
Great. Okay, another question here. Is this funding opportunity appropriate for the research and development of early stage COVID-19 related technology solutions, such as the development of a new nanofabricated COVID-19 virus test that would result in the diversification of testing supply chains? All right, who'd like to try to take that one? Erica, you want to try that for a Manufacturing Reimagined grant perspective?
Yeah, from a manufacturing perspective, I think I would need to know more about it, but the idea here is to fund companies that are having COVID issues and really help expand manufacturing and business in New York State. So I think whether it's a direct fit or not, I think we could find something in some way to help the company. And even if it's not us, we know at least 3 other people with funding, and even outside of this program, there's stuff available too. So it's definitely worth having a conversation and digging a little deeper and finding out what might be the best fit.
Okay, Annette?
And I'll chime in too. A bit of it might also depend on the stage of the company that's asking the question, because obviously there's a ton of startup resources available to do R&D connected with the COEs and the CATs. So in that sense, depending on what level the product is at right now, we should be able to do some matching to say, how do we get you to that next level, whether it's to a prototype or a demonstration study, something like that. There should be resources available that we can help at least put together that roadmap to help you.
Great.
That was a really good point, Annette, about the stage, because it really did, even for the supply chain one, I think about things like if you're an existing company and you're pivoting and you're going to do some research into a new market, and or bringing in a new technology or something to allow you to become more vertical from something that you might import or whatever, and it could impact supply chain and things like that. Yeah, you could do some work that helps with market development or technology development and things like that. But again, to the point, reach out to the MEPs, have a conversation, because sometimes it's not just this program that could assist. So.
All right, excellent. So this is a good question to finish on. Well, will this presentation be available after to go back and get websites listed and more information? And the answer is definitely yes. Within the next 24 hours, 48 hours, you're going to get a link to the recorded presentation and through your email, along with a quick survey. We really depend on the surveys to help us know whether we're on track, whether we're delivering relevant information to you. So pretty important if you guys could take a few minutes. We're going to try to embed the survey right in the email, make it easy on you, and with a link to submit a manufacturing reimagined request for the report. And again, even if you want to, if it seems like we should be directing you to some other resource, either, Annette, Mike, or Alexis's program, we definitely will be doing that as well. So be on the lookout for that follow-up from us. With that, thank you very much for taking the time to attend today. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.